Guys, I want you to take a deep breath in and out, and I want you to see how you feel. That help a little bit? I want you to check something. Next time you go outside, let's say you're in the busy streets of New York or you're living on these mountains, wherever the place is, I want you to look around and see other people. How are they breathing? Are their mouths open? Are their mouths closed? Are they taking quicker, faster breaths? Or are they taking nice, slow, methodical breaths? And now I want you to think about yourself, like right now, for example, or next time you get up and walk around. Is your mouth open or is your mouth closed? Are you breathing really quickly or are you taking what feels like slower breaths? A lot of us take these shorter, quicker breaths. And what we do when we take these breaths is we're only using the upper half of our chest because we're just not breathing that long enough to fill up our lungs all the way. Now, the funny thing is, we didn't always breathe like that. 100 years ago, we used to breathe half of the amount that we do today. So in other words, today we are breathing twice as fast as we used to back in the 1920s. Now, why is that the case? Well, I dive deeper into that in another video, and I'm putting a link to that video in the description below. Okay, so what is the issue with taking these faster, quicker breaths? Well, usually when we're taking these quicker breaths, we're using our mouth. Now, what is the problem with that? Well, actually, there are a ton of issues with mouth breathing, and there's a ton of reasons why breathing through your nose is so much better. And I'm actually gonna put more links in the description below where you can learn more about that. Basically, when we're breathing through our mouth and we're taking these shorter breaths, we're only using the upper half of our chest. Again, when we're mouth breathing and we're taking these shorter breaths, we're only using the upper half of our chest and we're only using the upper half of our lungs. So one issue with that is we're not breathing as efficiently as we could because we're not using our lungs' full capacity. In other words, our lungs are pretty big, but we're not filling them up all the way. And it's not just about not breathing as efficiently. We're also not absorbing as much oxygen when we breathe through our mouth and we take these quicker breaths. And this has to do with a lot of things. And part of the reason has to do with how we balance the carbon dioxide and oxygen in our body. And also part of it has to do with how much time we're giving that oxygen to spend in our body. But there has been a lot of research on this. And there's also research that shows that if you're a mouth breather, you're more likely to have hypoxia. Hypoxia basically means you have a lower than normal amount of oxygen in your blood. Now, what is the issue with that? The issue with that is now we have less oxygen that's going to our organs and less oxygen that's going to our brain. So we're going to be functioning a lot less than we could, and we're also going to be a lot more tired. But on top of all that, this can also make us more anxious and more stressed out. And you might be wondering why that's the case. And the reason is that when we only use the upper half of our chest, it causes this cascade of hormones to be released from our brain. It causes this stress response, or in other words, our fight or flight response. Now, if you remember from biology or psychology class, this is called our sympathetic nervous system. So the upper half of our chest, or using the upper half of our lungs, will stimulate our sympathetic nervous system. And again, that stimulates this cascade of hormones that will stress us out. Now, sometimes we actually need the stress response. Like if there's a burglar chasing you, you probably want to have the stress response to get the heck out of there. But the problem comes with chronic stress. So if we're constantly in this stressed out response, if we're constantly stressed out like this, it's going to cause a whole cascade of issues later on. Why is chronic stress bad? Well, when we're stressed out, our body releases cortisol. Cortisol is basically our stressed out hormone, and it can also wake us up. One thing that cortisol does is it fights off antioxidants. Now, an antioxidant is basically something that fights off oxidation. Oxidation is something that can happen to our body, and basically what it does is it releases these free radicals, and these free radicals can over time damage our organs and damage our cells, and it can lead to a lot of chronic diseases later on. Now, obviously, we need a little bit of this response throughout the day, but the problem is when we constantly have this stress response, and this is gonna throw our hormones basically out of whack. So what do you do? What do you do if you're always stressed out? How do I lower this stress? You know, I'm just getting so stressed just thinking about it. So one thing you can do is to start breathing through your nose. Instead of taking these shorter, quicker breaths, you wanna be taking longer, more deeper breaths. And when you breathe through your nose, it kind of promotes that. So how exactly do you do this? Well, first you close your mouth and then you take a deep breath through your nose. Now, what you wanna be focusing on is actually your belly. you want your belly to be sticking out when you breathe. And the reason is that means that you're engaging your diaphragm. Your diaphragm is basically a muscle that sits right here, right underneath your lungs. And when your belly sticks out, that means that your diaphragm is being engaged. And when your diaphragm is being engaged, that means that it's filling up your lungs all the way with air. So now instead of just using the upper half of your lungs, you're using your lungs' whole capacity. So not only will this increase the efficiency of how we use our lungs, this will also engage what's called the parasympathetic response in our body. And what's the reason? Well, now we're using the lower half of our lungs. As opposed to the upper half, which stimulates the stress response, the lower half stimulates the parasympathetic, or in other words, the rest and relax response in our body. So now, instead of releasing cortisol and all this stress response, our body's gonna start releasing these relaxation hormones. And one of these hormones is a hormone that we naturally produce already before we're about to go to sleep, and it's called melatonin. And melatonin is also an antioxidant. So that means that this hormone can fight off that oxidative stress that has been caused by this stress response in our body. And this is actually something we can do to help recover after a workout. The reason is, whenever we work out, we release, again, that stress response, and we have such a high amount of cortisol. And a great way to recover is to do this diaphragm breathing and release more melatonin, and this will also help lower our cortisol levels. So this is a great way to recover after a workout and great way to regulate our hormones. So again, the way to breathe is to breathe slowly in through your nose and also expand your belly, and then slowly breathe out through your nose. The key here is to take both slow breaths in and slow breaths out. And you want to shoot for about 4 seconds when you're breathing in and 6 seconds when you're breathing out. And really, this is how you should try to be breathing all the time. Specifically, you want to be using your nose and your diaphragm pretty much all the time. And obviously, there's going to be some exceptions to this. Like if you're doing a super intense workout and you need oxygen really quickly, at that point, you probably want to be using your mouth because your nose won't be able to get that oxygen to your lungs as fast as you would need it. But if we're just relaxing, if we're just going on a little walk, you want to be using your nose. This can make a big, huge difference with your life, especially when you're sleeping and also with a lot of other stuff. And again, check out the videos in my description below and you'll see some other cool benefits of breathing through your nose. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't that easy. If you're naturally a mouth breather and you're not used to breathing through your nose, it can be kind of hard to switch over. And a lot of people have other excuses like a deviated septum, or their nose is just always blocked, or they have allergies. And there are some ways to get around that. Obviously, with the deviated septum, you probably need a surgery. But if your nose is always blocked or your nose is always stuffy, there's actually a trick we can do to open up our nasal passages so we can start breathing through our nose some more. And again, I have another video on that and it's in the description below. But regardless, if you are stressed out and you just want to relax, you should try this technique. Try just focusing on your breathing, try breathing in through your nose and using your diaphragm. And if you do this for just about 10 to 20 minutes, this can make a huge difference and this can really lower your stress. And really, this is no different than what people have been doing for years. Like in yoga or in meditation, people always practice this same breathing technique. It's not any different. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you liked that video. If you haven't already, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel below. I will see you in the next video.